Welcome to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we're going to be talking with Stephanie Gumm. She is on the board of directors of Dandelion Meadow. This is a recovery program specifically for women based out in Loudoun County. Thank you so much for being here tonight, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me, Catherine. It's a pleasure.
So, a lot of people may not have heard of this organization because it is new. It was very new to me when you and I first connected. And I'm fascinated, first of all, by the specificity of this recovery program and the story of how this came to be out in Loudoun County. Tell us a little bit about your founder.
Sure. So, first of all, our endeavor is to open a home for women of substance abuse and human trafficking. Elise Sweeney, who has a son in recovery, and also two mothers of his children, also in recovery, has been fighting and looking for a way, particularly to help those mothers. There are not a lot of resources for women that address both the issues and not with the model that we are in a sister community with. It's a very successful model, and it's different from most recovery homes.
Right. So, your model is based on something that's located in Percival, I believe. Thistle Farm?
It's actually, Thistle Farms is based in Nashville,
Ah,
outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Um, we are we are in the process of looking to open a home, possibly in the western part of Loudoun County. The reason being is Loudoun County is the sixth largest county for human trafficking in the country, and typically the substance abuse and human trafficking are tied together. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to help women in this arena.
and there really is a model. So, in looking at it's kind of based on this 12-step program, but this is like a 2-year program. So there's when people first join the circle and how they kind of move through from a place of crisis to a place of recovery, and in the many steps and the kinds of therapies that are involved in helping people to wholly recover from addiction and or the effects of human trafficking. So I know that one of the people on your board is also a therapist. Tell us a little bit about how you kind of put together this board of all these folks who come with different talents.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a tremendous board. We have two therapists on the board, actually, and we have someone in marketing, of course, an attorney. It's really and each person, each board member, we are a working board. Each one of them really comes with their own story, where they've either had a family member who's been a victim of substance abuse or trafficking, or they're serving in their community to help in that arena, or they have a really good friend that was a victim or is a victim of trafficking or substance abuse. Unfortunately, I lost a friend earlier this year to substance abuse. So it's really comes close to home for each one of us.
I think there's more of us who know someone. The opioid epidemic has swept this country like
Mhm.
nothing else since the 90s, really, is when it started. Virginia has been particularly hard hit. And so I think now, if you asked almost anyone, every one of us knows someone who has been a victim of especially addiction. And so, one of the things about recovering from addiction is that it's not something that is a short term proposition. And so the greatest success has generally been when people are supported over the long term. So this is not something where you go in for 30 days and you come out into your community and you're cured, because it just doesn't work that way. And this is what kind of intrigues me about the model you're trying to follow, that you're acknowledging right up front that there are stages and there is a path that people go through in order to be supported on their journey and can maintain when they finally return to their community, that they are supported in their recovery. And I think most people that I know, you're never not in recovery. whatever your addiction is. You're never not in recovery. It's just something you do for the rest of your life.
Correct. You're absolutely right. And what makes this model successful is the women come in, first 6 months, they'll be in therapy. Then the next 12 to 18 months, they're learning how to run a business. They're learning accounting, budgeting, manufacturing, sales, and marketing. They're learning all aspects of running the business so that when they graduate, they have the experience, the finances, and the confidence, most of all, to go out and lead a healthy lifestyle, and not go back to what once was. Typically, in a recovery home, a lot of them have a 68% recidivism rate. With this model, the success rate after 5 years is 75%. So it's a really phenomenal model to copy that we're copying. And there are about 40 other sister communities throughout the country. So, and the idea is that we're going to help them with the business side of it and run a couple different businesses, which also help support the house. But no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, the women's situations tend to be different for a number of reasons. First of all, victims of human trafficking tend to be overwhelmingly women, not entirely and not always, but
Correct.
overwhelmingly women. A lot of women are mothers, and this is a whole different layer when you have responsibility to children or you're trying to work through recovery and you have children out there who also need your support, even though you are traumatized yourself and you are working to be self-sufficient. Many women have to be not only self-sufficient, they have to be there for their children. And so having programs that acknowledge that women's recovery is different and that there are aspects of women's recovery that are different from just many other types of recovery programs. And I love the fact that it's called Dandelion Meadow. I don't know how you chose that name or if there's a significance, but I do believe but acknowledging that women's recovery is different is really central to what you're trying to do.
No, absolutely. The idea behind the dandelion is that it's deeply rooted in the ground, and then it comes up with this lovely flower, and then eventually the petals fly off and to live their own new life. And that's the concept behind it. It's looked upon as a weed, but it really can turn into a flower and then go off on its own.
It's funny you say that because I had a friend who once said the only difference between a weed and a flower is whose yard it's in.
That's right.
And I'm like, touche, right? It is a flower.
Absolutely.
It's only a weed if you don't want it there, but it's a flower. So,
Yes.
and it is resilient because if it wasn't resilient, we wouldn't all be fighting the battle of dandelions. But I love this idea too that it goes to seed and it flies off and it seeds new plants and there's a new beginning for every dandelion is the beginning of a new life and a new plant. And I love that imagery there. So, in trying to stand up this program out in Loudoun County, it's not necessarily easy. You've bitten off a lot to put together a program like this. So, how long have you been at it and what is sort of your timeline for what you hope to accomplish?
So we're hoping, we've been at this for about 3 years since Elise founded it. We're hoping to open a home in the next year. Ideally, we're still in search of the right place. We have a couple, the ideal situation we just uncovered is a farmette, about 7 acres. It's a beautiful home that can accommodate 6 to 8 women. We really want to start out with maybe 4 to 5, but it's where we could perhaps start an aquaponics business or a cosmetics business out of goat milk, grow flowers. So there are different models that we're looking at creating to help keep the women busy and productive, and again, gaining that experience and learning in how to run a business and so that they can go out and start working right away. But it's ideal because it gives us the ability to expand.
Absolutely. And Loudoun County is a great place There is a lot of land out in Loudoun County, and yet its proximity to Dulles Airport is one of the reasons that this area is so terrible for human
Yes.
trafficking.
Yes.
Same with New York City and any place where there's an international airport. That's part of the problem. But Loudoun has a lot of rural area, but it's not necessarily in a rural place.
Correct. And you're right. It's the proximity to Dulles Airport, BWI. It's the shipping port of Baltimore where people are coming in container ships, and it's 81 is a huge corridor for trafficking.
It is for the opioid trade too.
Yep.
Beth Macy wrote the wonderful book Dope Sick, which was made into a series on Hulu with Michael Keaton. But she's a reporter in Roanoke, and Dope Sick really shows you exactly how the drugs come from Baltimore straight down 81 to the Appalachia country, Ohio, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Southwest Virginia.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even people that pick our apples in the fall are trafficked. So it's our focus is primarily women, but don't discount that there are men and children out there being trafficked for sure.
And that's what we have to worry about with young women too. And this country, I think all countries have struggled with how can you have a child prostitute? Because if it's a child, they're a victim of sexual violence and sexual abuse. So it's hard to say that you've got someone committing a crime if they're actually a victim of crime. And I think a lot of people have struggled to wrap their minds around that young people being trafficked, they are victims. And too often they end up in the criminal justice system, which is not the place to help them.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at foster children, but when they turn 18, they're expected to just leave and they have nowhere to go or things to do. They're the most susceptible. But absolutely, the trafficking and the abuse go hand in hand. A lot of the women that Thistle Farms, our founding community, has served are women coming right out of jail. They're serving women in jail and getting them ready to come out and make that change into recovery as well.
Oh,
So
I'm so glad you brought that up because we also work with Friends of Guest House in Alexandria, which is the only reentry program for women in Virginia. We're going to go to a quick break, Stephanie, but please, those of you at home, stay with us because after this break, we are going to be talking again with Stephanie Gumm of Dandelion Meadow.
Caitlin, be serious. Now take the oath. Come on. I'm totally taking this seriously. Okay, I'm ready. You may begin. I pledge that I will never meet in person with anyone I first met online without checking with my parent or guardian. And furthermore, if my parent or guardian agrees to the meeting, it will be in a public place and my parent or guardian must come along. Do you pinky swear? I do.
When you teach your kids about internet safety, they'll pass it on. For more information, go to cableclicksmart.org.
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything. I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor. If making my detox public is gonna help somebody, I'm all for it. I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
Your blood pressure numbers could change your life. Talk to your doctor about creating a plan that works better for you. Start taking the right steps at manageyourbp.org.
Welcome back to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and we are talking with Stephanie Gumm. She is on the board of Dandelion Meadow. This is a recovery program specifically for women who are suffering from addiction and human trafficking. The proposed location is out in Loudoun County, and they have been working for 3 years to stand up this residential program. And Stephanie's here to tell us how they are working to build a coalition of people who want to be part of developing this new model of recovery specifically for women. So, Stephanie, you think you've identified, well, you definitely have identified a model. You think you've identified a
Yeah.
location. You told us a little bit about some of the things that you hope can be done at this location. A cottage industry, product development, from the farm. So, from this point forward, what are you hoping to do as in the next year? You said you hope to open in the next year. So, on your timeline, what are some of the steps and what are some of the people that you're looking for?
Well, no, I appreciate you asking. So ideally, we're really looking to partner with other businesses in the community that may help us get the business up and running, whether it's a hydroponics or aquaponics, or if they have experience farmers, or if they have employees that are looking for volunteer opportunities. Um, we're if they have experience in the cosmetic industry, in all natural products, creating, and that could be anything from, um, the lipsticks to the essential oils.
Right.
But so we're looking for organizations and people that are knowledgeable about those products. We have some upcoming events as well that people can come and learn more about what our endeavor is and what we're trying to do. Um,
Are those things listed on your website, which is dandelionmeadow.org? But so those upcoming events that, and again, to engage with the public, people are invited to come hear more about what you're doing, which I think is important. And so dandelionmeadow.org is the place where you can find where these upcoming events are going to be for the rest of the year, I'm imagining.
yes, yes. We've got a fashion show coming up in June. We've got a golf tournament, our second annual golf tournament in September, and then we're going to be doing a gala um, in probably towards mid-November with a silent auction. So we'll be looking for partners as well for donations and people that are really committed and passionate about women's issues, trafficking or substance abuse.
And thank goodness it seems like we might be emerging from the pandemic. I think COVID was hard for many nonprofits especially the ones doing direct service. And trying to just be in person safely has been a challenge. And it looks like for the most part, we're going to get back to a cautious way of living, but being together in person. So that's a relief too, that we can kind of get back to life as we know it. Tell me a little bit about, you said you've got two therapists on your board. You and I, when we first talked to each other, discovered we had Joshua Cagney in common because I've actually interviewed him for this show. And so, again, you've got people who understand this type of therapy and exactly what's involved. How do you hope to attract, a more robust staffing?
No, I appreciate that. So we actually have a third board member who has experience in therapeutic programming on the human trafficking side as well. So we're in the process of creating that program, and we have another person coming on board who also has some further trafficking experience in the therapy arena. So we're hoping. We have not finalized our program yet, but again, we have a very good base to work off of with Thistle Farms, and so that we can create our own from the gifts that we have in our own community to put together our own program and to see what's going to be best for our home. But we have that base at Thistle Farms that we can mirror some of the ideas of what's worked. And not copy what hasn't worked.
Yeah, I mean, best practices is so important, especially when you have a high success rate and low recidivism. That really is the key. And as I mentioned before, Friends of Guest House, which is a reentry program for women here in Virginia. It's been around since like 1974. And many people have not heard of it. And yet their success rate is so incredibly high. And for the same reason, the women live together in a house. They get therapy, they get skills training, they're supported in their employment. And it's all by way of easing them back into the community with support. And I can't stress enough that that is the type of recovery program that is most successful, but it's also most expensive because it's intensive. And you're talking about serving 5 to 8 women. And that, to a lot of people, it's like, that's so few. And yet it takes a lot to support in one-on-one trauma-informed therapy and recovery programs for that many women. And I only know that because Friends of Guest House is also very small and looking to expand. And there's just a huge price tag to doing that.
No, there absolutely is, and that's why we've been doing this for a couple of years and hosting these events to help us along the way. And we've had a couple benefactors that have been very, very generous as well. And we're hoping that's what's gonna come through on the format that we're hoping will be ours. But you're right, it isn't expensive. But the idea too is with the businesses running, it will help support the house once that gets up and going and we can expand.
That's true. I mean, you would have like a stream of revenue from the products that you're selling
Right.
from the farm. So as you build your coalition and you move forward, I'm assuming that really visibility and getting people familiar with what you're doing is really one of the biggest hurdles, because marketing and communication is every nonprofit's biggest hurdle. It's like, who does that? So, I'm a Rotarian, and I know that there's a lot of service clubs, women's clubs, gardens clubs, Kiwanis, JCs, all kinds of, service organizations in Northern Virginia specifically that host speakers. And so I'm going to just put it out there. Are there people on your board or in your organization who are available to speak to organizations?
Absolutely. I appreciate that, Catherine. Yes. So our chair of the board, Freddie Donner, and myself, and truly anyone on the board is can speak to any organization. I'm also been a Rotarian, and you're right. There's some phenomenal organizations out there that can help us. I appreciate you bringing that up. We would be very much interested in doing that to help spread the word and gain the interest to Dandelion Meadow.
And when you think about it, and it's our generation, I'm going to like lump us together in the same generation, but service clubs are not necessarily something that maybe younger professionals are familiar with. But the Greater Federation of Women's Clubs, the AAUW, even the League of Women Voters get behind efforts like this and support this. And so I do encourage those of our viewers who belong to service clubs to think about your organization when they need a speaker, or if they're looking, to, embrace something that matters to them, like a recovery program in Northern Virginia for women who are victims of human trafficking and addiction, that your organization is looking for that kind of collaborative support and that kind of partnership. And some of that is getting a speaker out there to actually explain the organization. A lot of us are still doing that via Zoom, which is in some ways it's sad because we're not together in person. On the other hand, it makes it easier to get a lot of different kinds of speakers to speak to your club because they don't have to travel there. At least that's been my experience.
No, you're absolutely right. And it gives us a wider audience.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, I've been able to get speakers from like all over Virginia to talk to my Rotary Club, and it's because they're doing it virtually.
Right.
And up until the pandemic, we never did things that way. So there's been a little bit of a silver lining. You always have to look for the bright spots here. There's been a little bit of a silver lining when we discovered that virtual tools actually can be helpful. And this is one of the ways that it can be, is that organizations, particularly in Northern Virginia, who care about this and who want to be part of the solution, a best models program where that it's a proven success and how to do this, that those potential partners out there need to reach out to you.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it. We're taking, like you said earlier, best practices from our sister community where it's been proven to work for over 20 years. Becca Stevens, who's the original founder of Thistle Farms, has been named by CNN as Volunteer of the Year. The products that they've sold were eventually bought by Whole Foods, which of course Amazon bought. So they started out with this essential oils and candles and so forth. So it's really, and their businesses have just really taken off. And we're hoping that's what's going to happen here as well. Well, the opportunity is here. We just need to create the right partnerships to make it happen.
Well, like I said, I think you've landed in a great place out in Loudoun County. You know, it's close in, and yet there's plenty of space out there still to establish a farm, a working farm. Another good friend of mine has a farm less ordinary, Greg Masucci, and he, established that to help young people with disabilities, intellectual disabilities. And I look at what Greg and his wife did out in Loudoun County with a farm less ordinary, and I know these things are possible. You know, people have a good idea and they go out and they do this thing. And so, people know how to reach you through your website. You have upcoming events in June. Remind us again what they are.
June is a fashion show. We're nailing down the date now. We have a golf tournament at Raspberry Falls, September 15th, and then we'll be hosting a gala in November. We're also going to be participating in the farmers market at One Loudoun.
Great.
And have a booth there for the first Saturday of each month, May through September, to get the word out.
Fantastic. Okay, well, that's accessible. Everybody heard it. One Loudoun Farmers Market, first Saturday of the month. Go out there and look for Dandelion Meadow. Find out more information and how you can help, and think about who you know that might be a great partner or a great collaborative partner for Dandelion Meadow. Thank you again, Stephanie. This has been very informative. I'm very excited about what you're doing. I do think there is a need for this, and all of us should embrace being part of this solution. So I encourage all of our viewers to check out dandelionmeadow.org and to reach out to Stephanie and to ask her to come and talk to your club or your organization or your faith community, people who want to be part of this solution. And thank you so much for being here, Stephanie. And for those of you at home, this is what you need to know.